Vlogpose here with episode 10 of Future Diary. So the episode starts off with Yuno is digging her backyard, and it's all for Yuki. Like, I'm digging this for Yuki. And the weird thing with this episode was, as she's down there, she thought, what was I doing again? So you're like, you were digging for Yuki. You forgot? Yeah, and now I want to talk about the theme song, because I never really got a chance to talk about that, and there's a lot of imagery, and for one, it's also an awesome song. But so here's just some screenshots or snippets of the theme song, because there's a lot of imagery in there. So first you have a knife, which of course is third, and then you have a revolver, which of course is fourth. And you have some puppets that are bleeding on the wall. That's clearly fifth. You have the ball melting, and that's sixth. Then you have Deus's chamber, and you get a... which is really cool. Actually, that's not really important. You have some hands that are reaching for each other, which could be the first scene that we see in the show, with Yuno saying, "Wake up, Yuki," or whatever. And so you have these red hands, and they're holding hands as one's on the ground, thinking like, well, this could be a reference to the first scene in the first episode, possibly. I know I'm a little late talking about that in the first episode, on episode 10, but whatever. Then you have this knife and a comb in kind of an X shape. Now, we haven't seen those yet. And then we have a giant skull with a baker's hat behind a bunch of little skulls. Now, there is a character with a bigger head. Like, the proportion from what we've seen in the silhouettes just don't match up. I mean, the head's like mascot huge. So who knows what that's all about. Then, of course, we have Ninth, and she's throwing off the eye patch. So they're kind of already showing in even the first episode that this character is going to have an eye patch. You don't know who she is until pretty much the end of the second episode, and watch the intro for the third episode, and you're like, oh, that's Ninth. So yeah, and then you're going through Deus's chamber, and you're actually seeing, if you pause or slow it down, you get to see pretty much everybody from a distance. So you're like, oh, okay, I recognize that person, I recognize them, which is really cool. As the series goes on, you actually start to recognize more and more people. And then you have this really epic conclusion to the intro, where Yuno and Yuno are fighting, and then their fingers touch and they merge together. You're like, what? Oh, and then of course you have the hands grabbing each other at the end. But yeah, there's a lot of imagery. And I know I skipped over a lot of it. Like, you had Murmur and the chains behind her, and Yuki's got shattering going on, and Yuno's got the spinny thing and disappear. So yeah, we've got a lot of interesting imagery going on in this intro, and the intro theme song is awesome. So although if you're watching this vlog along with the series like you're supposed to, you already know how awesome the theme song is. Unless you don't like it and you're skipping it, which that's a shame, because you're missing out. Anyway, so the episode starts off with Ninth in the cabin, and she's making some explosives. She's on her computer or whatever, and it's all for fourth, whatever that means. And then we have some weird flashback to pretty much when the game started, and Murmur's narrating this thing as it's happening, and she's narrating this like a romance story or something. But anyway, Ninth was battling third, because she was thinking that the escape diary would beat the murder diary. But those two were a really good match, as naturally she's trying to escape from the murderer, and the murderer knows exactly where she's running to try to hunt her down to kill her. So that works out in an interesting way. And then she falls out the window, and right in front of Nishijima, the assistant detective him. And you can kind of hear the actual conversation, but it's really hard to hear over Murmur's thing. I really would have appreciated, well, I'm watching this dubbed, so maybe the subbed actually has both lines of dialogue, I don't know, but it would be nice to have some kind of words at the bottom of the screen describing what exactly Ninth and Nishijima are saying, because they're arguing, and Murmur's like, oh, let me take you away because I love you. I can't let Third get you. And now there are a couple lines that they seem to match up. Like I don't know, but yeah. But I thought that was funny. Meanwhile, it kind of zooms out, and Deus is like, "What are you reading?" She's like, "Oh, it's manga. It's a romance manga." Okay. Fortunately, then, we are able to actually hear what Ninth and Nishijima are saying when they get into this abandoned school, some kind of art school or whatever, and they hide in some fashion design class. There's old clothes everywhere. Kind of ugly looking, but it's just not my style, I guess. And they're handcuffed, by the way, so that makes things awkward. And so while they're in there arguing, and she's like, "You need to take these off." He's like, "No, I'm not taking the handcuffs off." She's like, "No, you gotta take them off. I'm not taking them off." And she's like, "Come on, please." And she's like acting all cute and everything. He's like, "No." He's like, "It's an emergency." He's like, "What? Is he here?" "No, I have to pee." Oh, okay. So then you have this really awkward scene where she's in the restroom and he's outside. He's got his hand basically there because, yeah. And she's like, "Don't look. I'm not looking. Don't listen to anything. Don't breathe, okay?" She's like, "I don't believe you. Just hurry up." So then she's trying to flush the toilet, and it's not working. And so she kicks the toilet, and she gets splashed with all the water. Very hilarious. So now she's soaked and cold as they're trying to make their getaway from Third. And Nishijima's like, "Okay, no, you are getting changed." And so he finds this nice pink dress, and so at least it's something dry. And she's like, "No, I'm not wearing this. This is way too girly." And he's like, "Oh, come on, you look cute." And she starts blushing now. She's like, "No, I don't do the girly things." And she starts backing away. And of course, they both trip. And I'm going to call this the Evangelion scene, where he's like, "Oh, oops. Just the way that Shinji did." Oh, that's a good show. Really depressing. Future Diary is depressing too. Anyway, so then they are doing like the round 2 with Third, and he's got a bulletproof vest on as she's gunning at him, and she's got one flash grenade left, and so they trap him in some kind of music room or whatever, and the flash grenade goes off or whatever, and they jump out the window or something, and then Deus is like, I'm intrigued now. So what would happen next if this was one of those romance stories? She's like, "Oh, they're gonna get eloped," and then you hear some gunshots, and Ninth's like, "I don't do girly," and it's like, "You need to put me in another genre right now." So that was kind of funny. It was almost like a fourth wall thing, but it was like it's not really directed at us. It's like she knows that she's being watched by Murmur, and Murmur's talking like this is all romance thing, so it's kind of a fourth wall thing. It's like a third and a half wall, if that makes sense. So that was really funny. And then, oh, excuse me. Then you get to the halfway point of the episode, and then it focuses on Yuki for the second half of the episode. Our good old happy favorite main character that we roll our eyes every time he opens his mouth. Anyway, so he's waiting at the bus stop for Akise, because he's like, "We're going to go see a movie because we're friends." So he gets really surprised when Yuno walks up. She's like, hey, come on, we're going to do this thing. He's like, no, I'm waiting on Akise. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, actually, Akise passed on the word to me about the wedding rehearsal thing that you wanted to go to but were too shy to say. And she actually has a text from Akise, so I'm kind of surprised that, A, she wanted another guy's number that wasn't Yuki, and B, that Akise was cool with giving her his number, but whatever. So they go to this this wedding rehearsal thing, and they're on the bus, and he's like, okay, yeah, this is out of control. She texts me more than she ever did before, and she walks me to every class, and now she's feeding me like I'm a child. She's like, here comes the airplane, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was their fun bus ride on their way to this wedding thing, and they're greeted by this woman with the last name of Kurusu. And so that's kind of a strange coincidence, maybe. So they're enjoying this fancy food and everything, and there looks like orange juice in the glass. Anyway, he's like, I should be wearing a monocle, and everybody else is like, look at these kids. So it was kind of cute, really. So they're getting fitted. You have this old hag, and she's complaining. She's complaining about babysitting or whatever as she's fitting Yuno, and Yuki puts on a tux and looks okay in the tux. Looks a lot better in the tux than he does in his regular clothes, but then of course Yuno comes out in her dress, and he's blushing and she's blushing, and oh, you look beautiful, and they get a picture taken together, and so Yuki's looking at this picture like, I think I'm enjoying this a little too much. And he's like, no, I can't. She's crazy. Flashbacks to bodies in the room. And they even agree to some fake wedding ceremony thing. He's like, well, it's not real. It should be okay. I want to say that maybe he said that because she says, oh, don't want to tempt fate. And he thought maybe if I go through with this, I'll be tempting fate and maybe it won't happen. That's possible. Or maybe he just saw how much Yuno wanted to do it, and being the good guy that he is, actually went through with something, putting somebody else before himself. That's what true love is what I've heard. So they're walking down the aisle, or she's walking down the aisle. He's already there and doing the exchanges. Do you take Yuki, that thing? And when it comes to him, in the back of his mind, when it says, do you, Yuki, take Yuno, he says, I would have. And then continues on, be your lawfully wedded wife. Maybe. So, a lot of uncertainty there. So then I'm going to call her woman Kurusu, was talking to Yuki at the end. Yuno's passed out on the couch or whatever. She had a big day. And she's like, wow, I like your enthusiasm. I wish my husband would take something from you on that. And he's like, oh, what did your husband do? Oh, he's a homicide detective. So yes, we have confirmed that woman Kurusu is Fourth's wife. So then, anyway, Yuki is carrying Yuno home, and he's like, oh, it's unlocked. Reaches for the lights, and you hear a voice from Akise saying, yeah, there's no power here. And so naturally, we're all confused, like, what are you doing here? Yuno's still asleep on Yuki's back. And Akise's like, yeah, I wanted to ask you about this room over here. So they open up this door, basically where the closet was, I keep calling it. And that leads to outside with the giant hole that's so deep that Akise says that you could throw a rock in there, you can't hit the bottom. Hear it hit the bottom. And that's when Yuno pretty much wakes up. Because this was all Akise's plan from the start. Like, the whole movie thing was just a diversion. The whole wedding thing was just a diversion to get Yuno out of the house, so that way Akise can be a little nosy and poke his nose where it doesn't belong, but probably should be. So anyway, Yuno walks up, and Yuki's like, where was that stuff What stuff? The stuff that was here last time I was here? What are you talking about? And she says, why don't we come back inside before we get eaten up by mosquitoes? I don't want your first time over here to leave a bad taste in your mouth. First time? I think we've been here before, you know. Back in episode, what was that, 3? You had your big date in the amusement park, and then that's when Yuki stumbled upon your skeletons, literal skeletons. You don't remember that? That's a little concerning. So, anyway, Yuki and Akise are walking home, and Akise was talking about cognitive dissonance disorder. It's like some kind of multi-personality thing, multiple personality disorder, I think. And he was hoping that confronting Yuno with this would make her realize what happened, but then he realized just how unstable she actually is and how much she needs Yuki here. So that moment was kind of a jarring moment. Just what's going on with Yuno's memory? She would clearly know that Yuki's been there before, but the beginning of the episode where she's digging the hole and then immediately forgets why she's digging the hole, as she just said that she's digging the hole for Yuki. So it's very concerning on what is going on through this pink-haired girl's head. Then things escalate a little bit more with, okay, so now we're focusing on 4th in the last minute of this episode. We have 10th, Dogman, on the board behind him, says, yeah, so this guy was murdered, and fortunately we have a lead. Our suspects are 2 14-year-old kids. Their names are Yukiteru Amino and Yuno Gasai. And he says, I want these punks within 24 hours. So 4th is apparently not that good of a guy after all. He forms this alliance and then thinks, I'm going to kill this guy and then pin it on 2 kids. Not cool. 9th is starting to look like a better person than you. And she blows things up. But at least she's not selling out kids. In fact, she saved those kids, or at least one of them, once. So, yeah, what's going on there? Then we go to the end credits, which I wanted to talk about because we have some silhouettes of all the diary users. And then it goes through like each diary user as they disappear. Now, some of them are pretty obvious. Like you have a dead person on the ground, and then you have a man with a knife. That's clearly 3rd. And then you have this man in a hospital room. He's crouched over like this or whatever and disappears. We don't know what that is yet. Then we have some, looks like little kid feet in front of some body bags. We clearly know that that's 5th, looking at his dead parents. And then we have, basically, you could tell that it's 6th as this naked body because we know her backstory. Naturally, things are covered by this ribbon. And the ribbon, then she disappears and the ribbon collapses. Then you have these 2 people that are by a window. We don't know what that is. Then we have our big-headed person in a garden with some other people, and they all disappear. Yeah, all these people are disappearing. Then we have clearly 10th, because that one's probably the most clear who it is. Just we have toddler Hinata with her hand in the way. So we can't see that it's 10th, but it is 10th. And then we have a man on a bench or whatever, under some kind of canopy or whatever. I don't know who this is. I was thinking it was 12th, but there's a scene with a man in front of a TV with headphones, and it looks like the whole explosions with little Power Ranger people, and that's clearly 12th. But I was thinking of 12th being some vigilante looking out for people in the streets or whatever, so I don't know who that is. It could be 9th? maybe? Because I know that Ninth was on the run for a while, so it could be her. I guess that makes more sense. We have a man looking down out a window down at the city, like some huge skyscraper. So we haven't met that person yet. And then it ends with some weird things behind some silhouette that is clearly Akise. So it's really cool on how we got introduced to all these characters in some way, in very subtle ways, since the first episode. Like even Akise, which we didn't think was going to be that big of a character, because, well, I didn't expect for him to be that big of a character, but he's been in the last 3 episodes now. So yeah, that's definitely something. Then of course we end with our murmur moment, or merment. That doesn't sound too good. Anyway, murmur moment. So Ninth is talking to Murmur and saying, hey, maybe this girly thing isn't so bad after all. It's basically picking up where we left off on Ninth's side of the story. And so she's like, what you need is a good hairdo. And so Murmur offers up all these hairdos, like this traditional Japanese top knot. She's like, no, I'm not doing the top knot. Okay, well, how about some blonde curls? She's like, what is wrong with you? Okay, how about the Kurusu do? And so it's basically Kurusu's hair. And she's like, no. She's like, an afro? And she's like, really? A masculine top knot? And she's like, oh god. Murmur's like, I'm getting bored. And then it's just straight bald. So then you have Ninth. She's chasing Murmur through Deus's chamber or whatever, and Deus is watching this, and he's like, I knew too. So that's how that ends. So that was pretty comedic, watching all the different things with Ninth. Ninth is still one of my favorite characters, so it's always fun to see a little bit more of Ninth. But just the different hairstyles, like the masculine top knot, really, that's great. She pulled off the blonde curls for that split second that she had them. Yeah, so that was that episode. I didn't really have any complaints, I guess, with this episode. It was a pretty solid episode. It was okay. Now the Murmur narrating over Ninth and Nishijima to the point where you can't hear what they're saying. I would have loved that to have been handled a little bit differently. Just text of what they're actually saying, so that way you can actually contrast to what is actually being said. Because you can tell, okay, they're clearly arguing, and Murmur's making it sound like that they're loving each other, but to actually, you could barely hear what they're saying. So it'd be nice if they actually had the words there that you can actually understand what they were saying. So that was probably my biggest complaint for this episode. But the rest of it was pretty solid. You get to learn a little bit more about Ninth and how she got that dress. And it kind of introduces some kind of dynamic between her and Nishijima, which I guess that kind of makes sense on why the two of them were working together in the very first episode, when they were tracking down Third's killers. Because you had her dressed up in a suit and glasses and everything behind Nishijima, even though he knew that she was the terrorist that he was looking for. But I guess since she was helping him track down Third, then he was able to kind of let things slide. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. But you could tell that maybe there is something to this whole romance thing. I mean, if there wasn't, Ninth wouldn't have been blushing the way she was when Nishijima said that she was cute. So there's clearly some kind of sparks there, even though they haven't really gone into too deep with that yet. But based on the way that they were acting towards each other in that one scene, you could tell there's definitely something going on. Not trying to... That might happen, that might not happen. I'm trying to keep with the facts that are only in this episode. So it could happen. Or maybe I'm completely wrong. But that's just kind of what I see in this episode. Anyway, I will catch you in the next vlog episode. I hope you've been enjoying Future Diary, and we will move on to episode 11. And yeah, okay, so Kurusu wants Yuki and Yuno in custody. How's that going to play out?